do you think about symbolism, man? You have any set ideas on symbolism?
Like, like a little bit.
All right.
I'm kind of the anti-symbolism. Well, I mean, I guess in a patriotic way.
Hmm.
Yeah. Oh, I've always
In a
viewed
patriotic
symbolism
way. What does
as.
that mean?
I mean, I've always viewed symbolism as being a tool, to control people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I mean, that's kind of that's my reading background,
It's
man.
interesting.
Was that?
Yeah, I agree. But do you think that it has to be to control people, or is it maybe just a way to communicate beyond language? Because it kind of does the same. I mean, communication is the foundation for control. But it doesn't have to be. Symbols don't have to be to control people. They could just be a language, right?
Yeah, for sure. And which is kind of like the anti George Monty, freaking, the more complicated the language is, you know, the smarter people are, or the more advanced the civilization is, which I don't think that's true. And I think symbology, you
Right.
know, uh,
Hmm.
is like proof. It doesn't support your theory.
Right. Right. Yeah. So, you know, as I as I as I move through this I don't know, this life we're living, I guess I'm just fascinated by different symbols throughout the time. And it doesn't have to be one language being better than another language, or one language being, you know, not as descriptive as a language, but the ideas of meaning that come from symbols. It seems to me that pictures, you often hear that term, a picture's worth 1,000 words. And sometimes you and I can see the same picture and understand what the meaning is. Like if you and I saw a picture of our old high school, we would both realize that's our old high school, and we would identify with it, and it's something we could identify together on, even though we would have different stories about that image. So when I think about the tech or the Rancho Longhorns as a symbol of the school we went to, it's interesting to me how I can show you a picture of it, or I can say Rancho Buena Vista, and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, even though we have different stories about that thing. I'm trying to get to when I talk to symbols. Like it's kind of blowing my mind.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know if schools are symbols. To me, when I think about symbols, I think about you know, the flags. I think about
Mm,
um, there's a lot of different things that I think about. When I think about like a school
mm-hmm.
or a place, I guess they could be symbols of a community. Um,
Sure.
but I don't really. I look at symbols as having, meaning to them that can be interpreted either, by understanding the meaning behind each part of the symbol, or
Mm-hmm.
you know, or or just being a like symbologists. They use similar symbols to help depict or to help understand what the symbol is depicting, right? And so, like, when I see a
Right.
school, I don't know if that's in there. I mean, I understand it's a school, but it could be any school, you know. Um,
You
I
think
don't
it's a
know, but I
symbol of
mean, I
learning?
understand what you could be a symbol of learning. Yeah. Um, but I mean, I get you. I understand what you're saying. You and I can look at that, RBV, and
Right.
understand what it is. And
Right.
then, yeah, we have different stories about it, and different experiences there.
Yeah.
But um, yeah, like when you think of symbols, George, what do you think of? Like what, like if you were to see, what to you is the most recognized symbol?
Probably the yin and yang symbol. Like that's one that, ever since moving to Hawaii, that's like one that you kind of see around. It's like the town and country sign a little bit, and it's also it means a lot to me just because there's so much in there. And the more, I think that all of us are kind of called to symbols. And like you may have a different symbol that you think of when I ask you about it. If I ask you to say symbol, you might say something different than I say the yin and yang sign. And I think that there's something to that. I think the symbols are calling to us because when you think of a symbol, maybe someone thinks of a heart, or like I said, I think of the yin and yang sign, but I think that those symbols are calling to you. That's why you're thinking about them. And when you think of your favorite symbol, or there's a symbol that pops into your head, what you're really doing is identifying with the meaning of that symbol. You may not know, it may not be a conscious thought, but that I think that symbols are almost like an unconscious language that we use, and we may not even be aware of it at times. What's your favorite symbol, or what's a symbol that you think about from time to time?
I don't know. I don't really think about symbols, but I would think like a popular symbol would be like um, I think the American flag is probably one of the most recognized symbols on earth, and I think it's
Yeah.
something that people actually think about, even more than maybe yin and yang. I mean, that's
Yeah.
kind of it's a culture thing, where I think
Yeah.
the American flag is pretty simple in its messaging.
Yep.
You see it, you understand it, especially if not if you're not here in America. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know what people are thinking about that symbol today, but for generations, people have looked at it, and people have dreamed about it, and that aren't living in America. I think it's
Yeah.
probably, to me, it's one of the most recognized symbols in the world, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a course on flags, it would be something that I want to take, and I think most people should take. Like you have like what's an upside down flag mean?
In distress.
Yeah. Yeah. You see
That's a
them, you see
maritime
them in
thing,
movies,
right?
whatever. It is a maritime thing. In fact, an American flag with gold fringe on it represents maritime law. That's why if you go into a courtroom, you'll see the flag with gold fringe on it, because when you're in a court of law, you're under maritime law. Like
You
there's a
know what?
law. We have land lawyers and maritime lawyers, and if you pass the bar, then you are willing to practice under maritime law.
Do they
That's what
call
all
that?
commerce is done under.
Do they call that the Admiralty flag?
That's a good question. I don't know. I like the word admirals in there, but I'm not sure on that. Like I said, I would love to take a class on flags. I think that there's a lot to be said about it. I think that we've lost a lot. If we just talk about the American flag, like how much has that changed? Even though the stripes and stars haven't changed on it, the meaning of America today is wildly different than what it meant to the silent generation, or the boomer generation, or the Gen X, versus the millennials. It's interesting to think about how here's this one symbol. Some people call it a symbol of freedom or a beacon of freedom, and a lot of people today wouldn't see. Like I probably wouldn't see in the flag today what my grandfather saw on it.
No, and that's because that flag is alive,
How
and
so? What do you mean?
well, it represents a living nation,
Mm,
and that flag also represents you know um to do better, to every day, right? Try to be a better nation, and the people within it trying to be better people. And so that flag,
I don't.
unlike some of the other flags, like take the Confederate flag for instance, that people like to fly, when the South
Mhm.
surrendered, that flag continued to live. It was dead. It was frozen in time. All of its hopes and dreams,
Mm,
all of its wants and needs were finished. It has no possibility to redeem itself. It's, it's a timepiece. It's a time vault that's stuck there, and nothing could ever become of that flag. Whereas the American flag, or Stars and Stripes, every day has opportunity to redeem itself, to be better, to be stronger, to be more just, to be more equal, to be more fair. It
I
has
don't know.
that.
I'd push back on that. I think that the Dukes of Hazzard, or the Southern flag, or what's the name? What do they call that flag? The Southern flag, or what's the name of it?
Confederate flag. I think it's the Confederate flag,
Yeah,
Confederate battle flag, right?
yeah. I don't see why it has to be dead. I mean, no ideas die. They just don't have any energy behind them. But it's kind of like a sail. Once you begin to put wind behind a sail, the sail becomes alive. I mean, there's no reason why the Confederate flag couldn't be reborn. Those ideas could be reborn. In fact, they're probably played out, throughout generations and lifetimes and genres throughout. So if I wrote a story about the Confederate, the same way that Philip K. Dick wrote a book about the Germans and the Japanese winning World War II, so too could I write a book about the Confederates winning against the Union, and then that flag would be brought back to life in some way, wouldn't it?
In a fictional sense.
In a fictional sense, yeah.
Right. I mean, that flag has no force or effect.
None?
It's not recognized.
There's still people that fly it today.
That's true. There are individuals that have different ideologies that fly that flag, for sure. But that flag has no power. You can't go to, you can't wage war, with that flag. It's a flag without a nation. It's not recognized by any other country on earth as being a legitimate flag that is a representation of an independent state. The flag is dead.
Yeah.
And a bunch of people,
maybe just dormant.
Can fantasize. Yeah, I mean, dormant. It's dead.
To me, dead means it can never come back to life.
It'll never come back to life.
Ever?
Ever.
I don't know. Like I could see situations where, I think it's plausible. I think you get in trouble when you say never. And I would agree with you that it's very unlikely for the South or that flag to be risen and have people fight behind it. But there are, groups that are trying to, like you said, there's individuals that believe in it. And if you look at an individual like a spark, all you need is the right tinder to light that spark on fire. You don't think there's any possible way there could be some civil war today and that the South would come back? I don't think they would be a force, but there's lots of talk about civil war right now. And if that's the case, if there's talk about civil war, isn't it possible that people would unite under that flag?
Oh, I'm sure some would unite underneath that flag, but they would get crushed immediately. No, it'd be like it's the United States of America waging war against Louisiana. What are the chances? But who you taking, George?
Well, it depends on what side the army backed. What's that?
What's that? I didn't say anything.
I think it depends on what side the military were to take. The
military has sworn to protect and to uphold the Constitution of the United States of America.
Yeah. Yeah. But I don't know how, do you think that they're doing a good job at that?
That's a whole nother story. That's a whole nother
yeah, it's interesting.
I don't know if they are, that's I think they are, I thought it was very powerful that after, the election loss of Donald Trump in 2020, and there was talk of declaring martial law and having the military run another election that, would be more favorable to the guy who blatantly lost it. That the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mike Milley, came out and gave a pretty powerful statement about the military's role within the United States of America and what they swear their allegiance to, and that is to a document and not a person. And that militaries have no business interfering or conducting or, refereeing elections. That was pretty powerful, as
Yeah.
somebody who, who I care about the Constitution, and having him say that, the highest ranking underneath the president, the highest ranking military official in America, in the United States, it was good to hear. It was a clear separation between politics and military, and he was very blunt in the way that he said it. I appreciated it.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's, that could be if that's the one guy that's standing between, there was a book written by gosh darn it, of course I'm going to blank on it, but it's called War is a Racket, and it was written by Smedley Butler, who was a 4-star general back in, probably the 20s. And back in the 20s, he had retired. I think it was the 20s. People, if you're listening, forgive me if I'm crushing the dates here. But Smedley Butler wrote a book called War is a Racket. And in that book, he spoke about the U.S. military being the ground forces for the large multinational corporations. And when he came back, he wrote this book explaining that. And in the book, he says that he was pulled aside by large corporate interests and asked to take his leadership and take over the government on behalf of the corporations. And because he had done such good work for the corporations in South America for United Fruit Company, that they were sure he was the guy that could take over America and, lead sort of a fascist regime. And so it seems to me that, that we're always in danger of that. We're always in danger of greed and selfishness and fascism. In fact, I think it was Noam Chomsky who said all nations are fascist. It just depends on to which degree they are fascist. And if you look at whether it's the Republicans or the Democrats, they always seem to be favoring a corporate interest, and it seems like that all the way through the it just seems like it runs all the way through the different areas. What's your take on that? What's your take about, governments, military, and fascism? And there seems to be a pattern there.
You want to talk to me about fascism?
Yeah, I mean, we could throw it out there. I mean, what do you think?
Governments and military and fascism. Wow, that's a big one.
It's huge, right?
I mean, I agree with Noam Chomsky, and I'm trying to remember what book that was from. There are pieces of fascism. There's pieces of everything within our government and all governments. There's fascism in this country. There's socialism in this country.
Sure.
There's authoritarian in this country. There's a lot of pieces of a lot of different things. And I think the military, and which is kind of interesting about our military, and I think Mike Milley summed it up best when he said we're the only country in the world that pledge allegiance to a document and not a government or a person, a single individual, or and so I think that right there was kind of the gist of our founding fathers, and one of the guardrails to protect against just through using the military as a way to to become a fascist state. But there are all different ways are attempting it right now in this country. There's a lot of talk about populism. Like there's this populist workers movement in America that, over the last probably 6-7 years has been growing and that it's probably peaked out, but it was pretty strong a few years ago. To me, that's, populism is always a good pathway to fascism or authoritarianism or, a dictatorship or communism. And then in a populist movement, authoritarian, fascism comes from the top down. It's replacing all the people in power with people who've never experienced power, and then basically using the writings of the Constitution, of the Constitution itself, as a way to then control people through a more fascist state. It's like Hitler, right? Hitler was a social democrat who didn't have the the majority of Germans. National social. Well, so he was a social democrat, and then a national socialist who didn't have the the majority of Germans standing behind him when he seized power, and then used basically the tools that were already in place within Germany, and then became a nationalist socialist, and promised people in a sinking economy and skyrocketing unemployment, still found a way to appease people by setting up social programs that like daycare and education and labor and all the rest of those things. But he did it through populism, right? It was this idea of that the working class people should be running the country, and not what he called the bourgeoisie, needed to be replaced, and the proletariats need to be, running the country. And so you're kind of seeing that happen around the world right now, right? I mean, they don't use Marxist terms. They don't use, they don't use fascist terminology, but they're using their own brand of terminology and their own brands of symbolism to promote populist movements around the world, to overthrow democracies and to overthrow, republics.
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating time to be alive. I really think that, we're on the cusp of changing our forms, and there's all this talk about socialism, or there's all this talk about capitalism. And my idea of these two forces are like we're this rocket ship in the middle, and on one side you have capitalism, and on one side you have socialism, and they're like the scaffolding of the rocket, and both of them are going to fall away, and we are going to emerge as something better. You see China with a sort of state-run capitalism, and you see in the United States you have both sides flirting with extremism. You have the left and Antifa, flirting with this idea of socialism and this idea of a basic income, which, I'm on the fence. I kind of think a social or a basic income for people would be a good thing, and I don't thoroughly, ascribe to the idea that if you give people money, they become fat and lazy and dumb. It seems to work pretty well for the banking industry. It seems to work pretty well to privatize all the profits and socialize all the losses, if in fact you're on the upper 1%. Like those guys seem to be doing pretty well, and they have taken this idea of privatizing profits and socializing losses, but yet when the people on the bottom ask for that, they go, "Oh, no, 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 you can't have that. That never works." But I think we're moving into something different, and I don't think we quite have the words to describe it, but I can see it emerging. You know, I can see this new sort of, maybe there's words to describe it, Paul. Maybe it's called Terra Libre.
Yeah, except for the basic income being provided by who?
Yeah, that's. I think that is, you know, the ideas of people on the top right now is like, we got to pay these people on the bottom. But the Terra Libre project, according to Ben, is, you know, you don't necessarily need that income from people. What you need is a fair structure where people can embrace and empower one another.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there's other ways to go about a basic income. How about affordable health care or free health care? You know, I mean, that saves people money. So instead of like giving them, you know, actual cash into their bank account, you're taking away a financial burden. How about making housing more affordable? I mean, there's mechanisms in place that can be manipulated to achieve some of these goals without just, you know, putting everybody on the dole. You know, I think there's.
Let me push back on that. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so, you know, I agree with you. I think that there are, and this is just sort of a, you know, a fact-finding mission, but it seems like it's a complex system. So, you know, we talk about giving free healthcare. So, like, how do you do that though? Like, how do you give free healthcare without compromising the quality of healthcare, in your opinion?
Well, I mean, so you get what you pay for, right? And I think if you could easily do that, if the federal government spent money on healthcare like they do in the military, we would have free healthcare for everybody in America, no matter how old you were, no matter if you had already had a pre-existing condition, no matter what. And it would be by far the greatest healthcare in the history of the world. But we choose not to do that. Choose to spend that money on financing wars. We choose to spend that money on, you know, on the military industrial complex in America. We choose to spend that money subsidizing, you know, energy, big business. You know, the wealthy and the elite have done a pretty good job over the last couple hundred years at you know, at making sure that the government works for them first and foremost before it works for anybody else. And
Yeah.
so we can change those things, right? Like if we put even, like, you know, if we added another, you know, 10 or 15% from the defense budget, the military budget, into education into this country, then we wouldn't be in the position that we are globally as far as education ranking. If we did that with healthcare, we could put a huge dent into not only how many people get covered free with healthcare, but the quality of that free healthcare as well. You know, that's always been the argument with, you know, between like the insurance companies, you know, and the government and the wealthy, you know, is that if you make healthcare free, then the quality of healthcare is going down. It's because of an open and free market and competition and these soaring healthcare prices, which allows us to take that money and dump it into research, you know, to make better drugs or to come up with better physical therapy or new, you know, ways of treating different types of diseases or injuries or whatever it may be. And that's true. They're right in the sense that it takes money to do all that. They just want you to think that the money has to come from you and not from the government.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I agree. I think in an actuality, I think it's the same thing. You know, I was talking to Ben about this a while back, and, you know, it seems to me that the military industrial complex, DARPA, the CIA, all these giant entities, it used to be that you as the taxpayer, your money went to fund this research. Your money went to the colleges and you funded medical research, you funded technological research, you funded all these things. And then when the fruits of your labor, when the fruits of that research came to fruition, and we got a new technological instrument or we got better industries, then the people were rewarded for the money that they invested into that research. But what happened was all of a sudden, this research that was done by the taxpayers' money through DARPA, through the military industrial complex, through the colleges, all of a sudden, as soon as they came up with something profitable, then that product was sold or turned into a private company and then sold back to the people. So it's like we paid for it twice. We paid for the research, we paid for the grants, we paid for all the doctors, we paid for everything to be done. And as soon as a product or service was made out of it, it was turned into a private company and sold back to us. And that can only happen so many times before the people become, the cash cow no longer has the money to invest. And all those profits are soaked right to the top. And that I think that's why we're in the situation we're in now. There's no doubt in my mind that we could have free education, we could have free healthcare, we could have better services. We could have all these things if we just got rid of some of the parasites, some of these middlemen, some of these private international businesses that have paid lobbyists to write the laws that allows them to do it. And I think that's kind of where we're at right now. It seems to me that there's one group of people saying, look, if we just get back to capitalism, get away from this crony capitalism, then we can go back to making our country function in a way that works for everyone. And this other group is like, no, it's too corrupt. We'll never get back there. Those are good ideas, but you'll never get there. We got to tear it down. And I think that what gives me a voice or gives me or sets my heart alight a little bit is that if you look at that argument, both sides want the same thing. Both sides want better communities. Both sides want better schools. I don't care if you're red or you're blue or you're Trump or you're Biden. When it comes down to it, both people want the system we have to be better. And I just think if we could start from there, if we could start with some common ground, then we could start to begin to build systems that work for everybody. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. But it's just like it's I don't know, when I look at it, I just see like a mess upon mess upon mess upon mess. And
Why?
getting to the bottom of that mess. Well, I think
Right.
because of laws. I think
Mm-hmm.
interpretation of laws.
Yep.
I think that I think that how can I put it? We live in a society where people have a basic understanding of language, where people have a basic understanding of terms.
Mm-hmm.
And there are rebel rousers out there that are trying to, change definitions and change terms to create arguments to kind of convolute, what's happening in America. And I'm talking about like when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to the military or any of these different things where the conversations like agreeing upon facts and these are the fights that happen every day in the U.S. Supreme Court. It's about interpretation, right? It's about understanding what the laws are. And so I think so long as we have, everything that has been ever written that's in the law or has been legislated, is up for interpretation, then I think we're always going to have these types of problems unless we can get back to a place where we can all say, yeah, like, I understand what you mean when you say that, and I'm not going to complicate it. I'm not going to try to fuck it all up, because we all can. You're a good debater, and that's part of the problem, is that some really good debaters out there, right? And so, when you put a bunch of good debaters in a room, that they'll just pick apart anything, like, you know what I mean? Like, and they could basically make a point out of ridiculousness. And so we have to get back to just back to the basics, I think, and really start looking at laws and rules and regulations and all of these different things. And some of these things, George, like laws that have been on the books for a long time that have never been revisited in 50, 60 years, are so outdated. They're so, they have nothing to do with, society today. And so that's what I mean by it's just mess upon mess upon mess, until you get a group of people that are willing to work together as one and put aside whatever personal thoughts or feelings or ambitions that they may have about what it takes to, be involved in government and to run a country. Until you can get them all to agree, then we're going to continue, doing what we're doing. It's like, why are we arguing about abortion in this country? It's so ridiculous. Why are we arguing about, still having racial issues and arguing about race in this country and religion and all these things? Because you know why? Because that's all that's left. And it's the things that are always going to be there, and things that people know that there will never be an agreement upon, because we've legislated and freaking, written laws and worked out a lot of shit. But now we're down to some nitty gritty stuff that's going to stop people from communicating with each other and stop people from coming together to revisit some of the laws and some of the regulations that we have in place that are inhibiting people from thriving. That's why.
So I agree with a lot of that. What I would push back on is this idea that that's all that's left. I feel I don't like it seems so petty to me. And when I know a lot of different people that I really care about it. When I get to have discussions with you or our friend Scott over here or Ben or Ranga or Kevin or all these people that we're lucky enough to have conversations with, some of the people in our family, even the people I don't agree with, I don't necessarily think they're petty, but it seems like that which we fight over is so petty. And I think that we're suffering from a lack of inspiration and a lack of imagination. And it's sad to me because it seems to me that when we come together is when the towers are attacked. When we come together is when there's a crisis, sometimes manufactured, sometimes not manufactured. And I guess on my darker days, I'm wondering if on my darker days, I think to myself, that's the only way we're going to be brought together is through some huge crisis. And then, you look at something like COVID that came. You could argue that COVID could have been something that unified everybody. And in fact, a lot of times it's the invisible enemies that are used to bring people together, whether it's communism or whether it's terrorism or it's racism, pick your ism. But it seems to be these invisible animals, these invisible tragedies that scare people into moving in a direction. And they work a lot of times. A lot of times they do galvanize people, maybe not for the best, because I don't think, I think you're famous for saying people that live in fear tend to make bad decisions. And these isms and these things around us tend to symbolize a group of people living in fear. But what about the, why can't we, it seems to me what would galvanize the United States of America is a project that made all of us see ourselves in a better light. If we had something to look forward to, if we had something to, something to love, something to look forward to, and something to be proud of, I think that that's the foundation to move any nation state forward. But there's too much money involved in breaking things up. In that movie Pretty Woman, where she dates Richard Gere, and all that guy does is he buys companies and breaks them up and sells them. We're no longer about building stuff. We're about breaking stuff down. So maybe if we could find a common goal to move towards, and I think that that's what global warming is. I think that is what climate change is. I think that that's what space is. These are giant ideas that are made to bring people together. It's unfortunate that a lot of the parts of them are bullshit, but that's the idea behind these giant ideas. What do you think?
I mean, it sounds good, but you know, you got to remember there's like 30% of the population that doesn't believe in those things that you think would unite us, like science and global warming and all the rest of that stuff. That's what I'm talking about, right? Like it's like facts are no longer facts. They're your facts or my facts, and then we can argue about, you know, whose facts are right. And then because most Americans don't know how to debate or don't know what a real argument actually looks like, a productive one, then then it just turns into mudslinging and bullshit. And then people walk away pissed off,
What?
and and then like, hey, I'm right, and the other person's like, no, I'm right, and that's how it ends, right? Not that I mean, that's to me, that's what I'm talking about. Is like we're so like. And the problem is, and I've said this, 100 times to you, man, is that people don't know how to recognize when, people are using bullshit arguments on them, and so they may actually accept that what this person just said them, which could be completely absurd, as being a relative part of this debate that they're having, and so. Yeah, I get it. Like, I mean, COVID and all the rest of these things. I think like someone's got to freaking drop a bomb on us to really bring us together. I don't think any of that stuff is because like I said before, man, because you got a pretty large piece of the population here that just doesn't believe in any of that shit. Not because they actually have a better explanation as to why these things are happening. It's just because they just don't believe. They reject it. That's a problem.
I think we could change it around. Like, one thing people do love to do is yell at each other. People like to win in an argument. People like that. And I think we could leverage that. I think that we could start off, what if we had like a UFC of debating? Like, think about it. Like, you could have like, in my town of Mililani, there's all these like little places you can rent for birthdays, or if you can do a show or something like that, like a little auditorium. I think you could start a debate circuit in your city. Once you won that debate, and like, you can make it good. You can make it really entertaining. You could sell churros and sell some beers. You can make it an event, and you would have the best debaters in your city go up there and debate the topics. And once it got good, you can move those people into the counties, move those people from the counties into the, state. You have a statewide debate. This probably sounds a lot like how our government was formed. We got away from it, but I think you could revive that. I think if you had, I think we spoke about having Eric Dyson on there with Jordan Peterson. Like, I've seen that debate. There's a series of debates in Canada. I forgot exactly what they're called, but they had a tremendous debate. And I think people would tune in for that if we could just get, I think people would tune in for that. And then people would start learning how to debate because they would watch their favorite debaters. They would learn about logical fallacies. That's a straw man. That's appeal to authority. That's an appeal to, all these different things. I think you could have people tune into that. I think that's all we need, is just a reinvigorating course on debates. And if we had as much emphasis on debates as we do on, we just brought up another league, maybe have maybe have a wet t-shirt contest in between the debaters. You know what I mean? Make it interesting.
The American Debate League of America.
Yeah, now you're talking, Paul. Tell me more about this American Debate League.
Well, I mean, look, like you've talked about this before, and like 3 or 4 times you bring up Eric Dyson. Yeah, because anybody would listen to. I would listen to Eric Dyson. I would listen to Eric Dyson. Read the phone book, right? Because the guy's just interesting, and he has.
You could get the mega guys to get their best guy and watch him fight.
And he's got it. There's a certain cadence in the way that he talks. And so Eric Dyson is but let me tell you what, most people, 99% 99.99% of them out there that actually probably know how to debate, they're not Eric Dyson. They're like Bankman-Fried's girlfriend.
What is up with that mess, man? That is crazy.
You know, and it's it's like most people don't want to watch a bunch of nerds, go up there and have debates. What are you going to be debating about? And you're right. And that's because, people like to yell at each other, but that's not the way you win a debate. But people enjoy that. Like,
it's, I guess that,
like if you wrapped it up with like, what is Dana White trying to do? Like the world slapping contest. Like he wants to get people that are like, slap each other in the face. Like that'd be interesting.
You see him slap his wife?
Yeah. So you have this debate, and then like whoever loses that round of the debate's got to stand there and hold some handles on a table and just take a smack from the guy that you're debating. That would be interesting.
Yeah, I would totally watch that.
It's like, oh yeah, this guy's, but and I think that's, you'd have to do something like that in order to sell it to like, I mean, the American public. What did our friend Ben say? Most Americans have a 6th grade education. Okay, well, that doesn't make for really good freaking TV promotion. Debates. If you think about it, it's like, oh, guys are going to tune in on Tuesday night at 10 p.m. to watch you and I debate, or they're going to watch WWE wrestling. WWE wrestling.
Yeah, well, I think you've all day, man. WWE is awesome. I remember going as a little kid and watching like Bam Bam Bigelow, and but I think you did a good job of bringing those, like marrying those two things. Like someone to get smacked if you use a logical fallacy, you get smacked. You know what I mean? Like you could bring up, even if you just brought out the white glove, right?
And then so people would actually want to pay attention and learn about some of these logical fallacies, because they'd be sitting there listening to somebody make an argument, and then at home they'd be like, ooh, he just red herring that thing big time. You know what I mean? And then sure enough, the red buzzer comes up like the gong from the Gong Show, and the opponent gets to just rear back and just slash one across the person's face. That'd be really interesting.
That would be interesting. You would see people just bite their tongues. All of a sudden, people would back out. You could have it could take the place of the talk show. You could have Lex Friedman and Kanye West up there, and every time Kanye West used a logical fallacy, Lex could smack him. There would be people that would sign up for that, and I think it would make tons of money. And then you see now you could have it. Who would you have sponsor that? Like Kleenex or someone? Like you would get Kleenex to sponsor it because then people would be crying?
No, man.
Band-Aid, you get Band-Aid to sponsor it because people get cut. Vaseline, you get all these people.
You have to have a bunch of like freaking some like, tax attorneys, for all those freaking, call this guy, Mark E. Freed. For all of your, for all your tax needs, if is the government after you, call Mark Freed. Like you would have to have that. A bunch of DUI lawyers, those guys can sponsor it. That'd be great.
Yeah, I think tons of people would sponsor that. I would watch that on pay-per-view. That would be great, man. You could have, and then you could debate. Depending on what the debate was about, if it was about drinking and driving, then you could have like the car company sponsor it. You could have like Miller Lite sponsor it. You could have.
No, I mean, I think for something like that, you probably have like Lyft or Uber sponsor. You know what I mean? You don't want alcohol production companies sponsoring freaking debates about alcohol and drunk driving.
Maybe they have a better debater. Maybe they bring in like this brings us back to like the Greeks, where you had sophists. You had Socrates that was all upset about sophistry and people coming in and learning how to argue just so that they can argue and win. Kind of brings us back to those times, but you would definitely get the WWE crowd involved in it if you could bring in like a controlled violence around it, right? And And what's wrong with controlled violence, man? I think we could use some of that.
Well, I mean, I think the WWE crowd could be also the biggest beneficiaries of learning how to debate. Like,
Yeah.
like a lot of like the WWE crowd, like, holy shit.
What would you win? Like if you came to this debate and if you used logical fallacies, you got slapped. Like what would you win at the end of the debate? Would it be like a title fight and you would win like 10 grand, or would you win like would it be more like of a old school Wheel of Fortune where you could like pick different things, or what do
That's
you
what
think
I
you
was
would
just
win?
thinking. Like a Price is Right, like,
Yeah.
trip for two to the Bahamas.
Yeah. And then you could that would be epic. I think we're on to something here. Debating, for those of you just like, imagine like taking your kids on Thursdays to go watch a debate, and you come up to like walk through the line, you can get some popcorn, you find your seat, and maybe it's like boxing because there's 6 debates. Like you have the undercard, and you talk about maybe the top card would be like Citizens United. That would be the top heavyweight fight of the night. But along the way, you have like like some of the debates about what is that thing called when you get into school if you're a minority but you're not a minority. Yeah, you could have affirmative action, or you could have these different things on the way up. And so if you use a logical fallacy, the person would a referee come in and blow a whistle, and then you get time, you get smacked. Like I think that we'd have to go to the judges. Okay, judges, was that a logical fallacy? And you get 4 judges over there, and they all raise their red panel, and the other person slaps on a white glove to smack them. Like I think that would work, man. I think a lot of people would enjoy that. I would totally watch that.
Totally watch that.
Wouldn't you?
I don't know if I would.
You would. Why wouldn't you?
I mean, it depends on what they were debating about.
Okay, so right. we should make the community get to vote on what the debate's about. Now you'd have to watch it. Maybe the kids in the high schools could like they could come up with what it is, and you have to. It would be like Hunger Games, because either someone in the community had to go and debate, or we went and chose somebody to debate. How about that? Put a little twist on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's the debate topics would definitely be interesting, right? You'd have to make them really interesting, like something that people cared about, and then there would have to be some sort of like education, and you'd need like a Vanna White up there,
Yes, I agree.
You need someone like that up there, and then you would need, like, who would host something like that?
Ooh.
I mean, that's the thing. It's like,
who would be a good host? I think get Joe Rogan to host it, maybe.
I don't think that guy just did.
Okay, someone else.
Someone who understood debate.
I think. Who is like the most beautiful woman that would be perfect to host that? Can you think of like a really intelligent, beautiful woman that would be perfect to host it?
I don't know.
Maybe get Taylor Swift to host it.
Oh my God, is she smart? I don't even know anything about her.
She's pretty intelligent to me.
Really?
Yeah, I think she is. Yeah, I've heard her talk a couple of times, but I like her. But she's kind of pop star. Okay, so who else could we get? Scott, who would you get to?
She is the epitome of pop star.
Yeah. Yeah, she is the epitome of pop star.
She is the epitome of pop star. I don't know. I'm just trying to think if there's, like who out there understands debate and is a beautiful woman. What's interesting, and it depends on your taste, man, is what's her Laura Coates from CNN. Look her up.
I will. I'll have to check Laura Coates. She sounds like she's kind of leaning left, though. You kind of want to find someone partisan.
She's
Try to think outside the news industry, maybe.
well, I'm talking
But
about
I mean,
beautiful woman who is who's smart, right?
true.
Um, I mean, geez, who else? Yeah, maybe somebody outside the news world. I mean, I don't pay attention to like pop
I
stars.
know, me neither.
So I wouldn't really know like who's smart. It's like Taylor Swift. I don't listen to her music. I don't think I've ever heard her say anything except for like, I don't know, like, I want to thank my producers and you know, and my crew for helping me make this beautiful album or whatever. I don't know. That's a tough one. Like you'd have to get somebody
Yeah.
that, like, I mean, there are definitely some, like who's kind of nerdy, but sexy, smart.
Yeah.
That's
I don't know.
Yeah, I
I,
don't know
I
either.
hardly spend any time watching television, so it's difficult for me to do that. And when I think of beautiful women, the only woman I can think of is my wife. So, man,
Yeah, is she standing right behind you?
it's true. It's true. I guess I'm not the type of guy. What are you gonna do? hmm.
Huh. I don't know, but I mean, so you find somebody like that, right?
Yeah.
And
Right.
then, you got to have like a handsome guy too. You know what I'm saying? That are like they're
Sure.
there and they're debating, and maybe they represent sides, and maybe each week they pick a different side to represent. You know,
Yeah. I like
um,
that.
and then maybe you hope a handful of people tune in and watch. It's debates.
Yeah.
It's debates. It's like
Yeah. And it has. I mean, it would have real consequences.
yeah. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like like it's debates with like yeah, with that thing Dana White's trying to start with people slapping each other
Yeah.
and
And would
or
it go in rounds? Would they debate like 3 minutes, and there could be three people you could get slapped within that 3 minutes, like three times, or would it be at the end of a round you would get three slaps?
well then so like can you bow out? Like
I think you'd have to be able to like throw in the towel like boxing.
yeah, you'd have to be able to
But
walk away, right? And then like but then what are you teaching people? You're teaching people like, man, this guy was right more often than he was wrong.
I think the button.
They'd win arguments, but he bowed out and lost because he
Yeah.
couldn't take it back in the face 10 times.
Well, I think that when you bow out, there's a button, and like how like when you were little and your cousin beat you up or something, you had to say uncle. I think if you're in a debate and you're using logical fallacies, but you don't want to get slapped, then you have to hit the button and say, "I'm a dummy. I'm a dummy." You have to do it 3 times, and now everybody knows that you're a dummy.
Well, let's.
I'm a dummy. I'm a dummy. I'm a dummy.
Here's the problem: is I think a lot of people who
Okay.
would be up there and not understanding like real debate, and would be doing like using some of those poor forms of communication, and they'd be getting slapped all the time. But maybe they could just take it, and then then like the guy who actually knows how to debate, maybe he's a little bit nerdy, and he gets slapped once and he's out. He clearly won the debate or was winning the debate, but he just didn't. He took one smack on the face from this other guy, and that was all he was willing to do, and he bowed out. So what are you teaching people? You're teaching people like, oh, just hang in there. You know what I mean? Like might is right, and and that's how you win a debate. And then pretty soon you got kids on the play school. Like parents are getting called up because little Johnny, and little Mikey were playing this little debate game that they saw their parents watch on TV the night before, and they're out there smacking each other in the face.
Well,
I mean,
as long as they're learning about logical fallacies, like, because if you don't commit any logical fallacies, you're never going to get hit. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But then they're also, but yeah, I guess, but it's a really harsh way to kind of, I mean, maybe there's something, I don't know, electrical shock or something. I don't know.
Okay, so then at the end, though, I think we're missing, like, how do you win? Like, you would have to win by applause, or what they do in these other debates that I saw is like when people come in, they say, who, like they say, raise your hand if you're on this side, raise your hand if you're on this side, raise your hand if you're undecided. And then they take that group of people that are undecided, and then at the end of the debate, they tally it all up and say 54% of people now believe this. And they figure out that the debate swung the undecided group over to this side. So that's how you would win. So you could theoretically take like 4 slaps to the face, and as long as you didn't bow out and the crowd voted for you at the end, then you won the debate.
Right. But the problem is, it's like I said before, like some guy could be using all types of ridiculous arguments and been slapped 10 times, but he's just eating the slaps. He doesn't care. Right. He's just like, I'll give me another slap. I'm going to eat it, you know? And then the other guy fucks up once. Right. And he doesn't want to eat the slaps. Right. He took that slap and that's it for him. He's bowing out. Well, you know, after one slap, he's done, but he clearly was winning the argument. Right. But who's standing there as the victor? The guy who took 10 slaps to the face, who just ate them all and didn't care. You know, so now you have a winner.
I guess how life works. I think it's a great way. Like sometimes life works like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Sometimes life works like that. That's how it works.
It does. Yeah, but now you just defeated the whole purpose of this thing, George. Like, what are you teaching people? Now you're messaging of like, hey, we're going to use.
You teach them life,
and we're going to get that. So that's like, there's many other ways you can teach people about life than actually trying to, you know, you're kind of undermining, you know, this idea.
No, because that would only happen a few times. Like most people, that wouldn't happen most times. Only a few times would that happen. And when it does happen, it's like the Romans that were like, let them live. Let him live. He took 5 slaps to the face, and he had some funny stuff. Let him live.
I don't know. Maybe
I think it works.
I don't know. Maybe for every time that the other guy has to take a slap to the face, that the guy giving the slap, maybe he gets to, like, if he, you know, now he's got a, you know, like there's only a degree. Like the guy can only rear back, you know, like 8 inches from his face and slap as hard as he can. You know what I mean? Because, you know, he's losing, you know what I mean? Or the guy's so far ahead that, you know, like maybe he can earn a helmet. Right? Like,
he can earn a helmet. How do you earn a helmet?
By slapping the other guy 10 times, right? It's like
making good points allows you to buy protective gear.
Yeah, wins also allow you to put on protective gear. Like, or you could limit the amount the guy can rear before he slaps you. You know what I mean? So it's like, you know, like, so the first round, like if you fuck up one time, right? So the first person to fuck up, you know what I mean? That person's kind of fucked because you can just rear back and just bam. But at the same time, like I got to rear all the way back and smack the shit out of this guy. And like, if I fuck up next, then, you know, like I could actually put on like a head sock to kind of soften the blow a little bit. You know, but if I get
Kanye West wears,
if I get to slap this guy twice, then maybe I get a head sock, and on top of that, the guy, if I end up making a mistake, you know, now I have a head sock, and the next thing that I won is that the guy can't reach back from my cheek more than 12 inches before he slaps me, so he can only get so much force, right? Just like, you know what I'm saying? So now I got a head sock on. And this guy is, you know, but then now because he got you, right, and you had to take one with the head sock on and 12 inches of rearing back from your cheek, that, you know, now I, you know, like now you're inhibited in some way, so I get to put on the head sock next time or something. You know what I mean? Like you could have it, you know, so, you know, if it's equal, people are smacking each other and it's funny and they're kind of getting hurt, but they're not really, you know. It's going to reward the person who is actually winning the debate.
Yeah, and it just came to my mind, like it would be a really dumb thing to put a helmet on because a helmet doesn't even protect your face. You know what I mean? So, like, if you put on a helmet in a slap fight, like, it wouldn't really help you. But that's the first thing I thought of. Like, I'd get a helmet, and then I'm like, that'd be the dumbest thing you could possibly do. Because, man, it's what if like your chair automatically, like when you were wrong, like your chair came forward and like you leaned in further. That way the guy could get like a better smack at you too. That'd be a pretty good one.
Yeah, you know, I mean, there's all kinds of things. I mean, people make up these game shows, bro. I mean, that's what it's turning into, right? As a game show.
Yeah, it is. I know. We just kind of
You
went
know,
off the rails, but that was fun.
yeah, but pretty soon, you know, like the debate thing is not even, no one's going to care about that anymore. People are just going to tune in to watch people, you know, slap the shit out of each other. You know,
Right.
which I mean,
We
that's
kind of lost it.
And if you, you know, and if you just taught people just a little bit of something every night, then I guess that's worth something, right?
Yeah. It sucks that we have to see. This is exactly what happens. Like, it starts off as like a good idea, and then it just turns into like violence and debauchery. Like, that's the same thing that happens with our, like, you could see in that conversation we just had there how a good idea slowly gets perverted into something where people would tune into it. You know, it doesn't have to be that way, but that stuff makes it much more entertaining. And I think that that could be a problem for the humankind, is the fact that, you know, it's like that movie Gladiator. Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained? Like, it seems to us like we have to like dial it up. You know, the same thing with drugs. Like, everyone wants maximum strength. You know, like give me the drug that'll kill me and then just back it off a little bit. Like, we want the maximum on there. Maybe it's human nature that makes us argumentative. Maybe it's human nature that makes us almost ungovernable. And maybe this idea of us being ungovernable is the thing that's beautiful about us.
Well, I mean, you know, this is the country where there's a lot of emphasis put on the individual, you know, where it's like the
Yeah.
individual before the community, right? And so, you know, when you have a system set up like that, then you're asking for confrontation. You know,
Yeah, the
there's
West
not a
is
lot of
built on
countries.
that.
Yeah, there's not a lot of countries out there that are like that, right? Where it's, you know, most places that I've been to are community first. You know, it's community first, and then the individual comes second. But, you know, in the United States of America, there's a huge emphasis, you know, and it's in, you know, that the individual, you know, individual liberties, individual freedoms, whatever you want to call them, you know, are what's more important.
But isn't there something beautiful about that, about rugged individualism? Isn't there something beautiful about the guy or the woman that can go out and make their own way and create a life worth living for themselves? Like, isn't that, I mean, maybe I'm romanticizing it, but I like to think that I'm an individual that doesn't, everybody needs help, and you're probably better with a team. However, all, or at least in the West, we fantasize about being the one person that can go out there and make it happen. And it's in our stories, it's in our poems, it's celebrated, and it is uniquely Western, this idea of the individual going out and making their own way. You know, and I can't help but think it's beautiful in a way, and it's something to aspire to. And I think maybe the argument against, or that gets put out there sometimes against community, is that, you know, if you're just part of the community, if you're just part of this team, then you never have the chance of rising above everyone. What do you think?
I mean, you know, I don't know how important rising above everyone else
Being the
is.
best. You got to be the best, Paul.
Well, you
You're the
can,
best
but
beekeeper out there.
but it's always been like that, even within community first societies, right? But it's within
I
the,
don't know. I've never lived in one.
it works within the confines or within the rules of the community. You know, like there's nothing wrong with being the best warrior, right? Because it's a benefit for the community. You know, but there's something wrong, you know, with being the guy who's stacked up, you know, whatever currency that a society is using, you know, while everybody else is suffering around them.
Hmm.
That's not operating within the you know, within the you know, the rules and the parameters of actually being part of a community based society. So in some cases, yeah, it's great to be the best. It's good if what you're doing at the very highest level, not only benefits you but benefits the people around you, then that's good. But
That's
if
the
what you're
key.
doing at the highest level is taking away from the people around you, then that's not a good thing.
Okay, that's
And
the
we
problem. Like when you look at the leaders today, yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
and we live in a society where that's very much accepted, right? Where like so
Yeah,
long as you're doing, good for yourself, it doesn't matter who around you're taking from, or you know,
yeah.
you're lessening the quality of life of the people around you. And sometimes those people are your immediate family, and that's still accepted in this country. And
Not
that's
even
and
accepted.
and
It's
I don't
rewarded.
think it's not true for every American, but it could be true, because and to a pretty large extent, it is socially acceptable to be that way.
In some ways, it makes me think like the corporate structure has taken over the family, and here's why that's a problem. Like the warrior in the hunter and gatherer tribe, he gets the big piece of meat, and he gets the most beautiful girl because he provides something that is a necessity for the group. He's looked up to, he's idolized because he provides so much for the group. When you look at a Wall Street trader, they don't provide anything except their immediate family and themselves. The reward system we have put in place, and mainly because of money, mainly because of we idolize money, or we fetishize money so much. But the people in leadership positions today, they no longer provide for the community. They provide only for themselves. So maybe it's just the structure. Maybe if we got back to idolizing the people that do the most for the community, maybe if the reward system rewarded those who did the best for the community, the world in which we live would become better.
Yeah, but I think the problem is there's such a large portion of Americans who feel that they're standing at the edge of the cliff, and all it would take is just a
Mm.
little nudge, and they're going to fall into the abyss of freaking homelessness, and foodlessness. And so, so long as Americans are like teetering between feast and famine, they're always gonna choose feast. So, it's like
Man.
it's like we've created a society where there's not a lot of middle ground anymore. The middle class is being eroded away. The gap between the poor and the wealthy continues to grow. Um, the amount of wealth that's consolidated within the top 1% of the wealthiest people in this country, outweighs everybody in the bottom, 90% by, I forget what the number is, it's something like, 100-fold. And so we live in a society where people think that at any moment, due to illness, due to unemployment, due to lack of housing, where they could end up on the street. And so we create a desperate society. And so what we ask of our leaders is to be like, it's really tempting. I understand it, that you want to take all this money from special interest groups, but we're telling you not to do it. Well, it's hard for them not to do it. When they're like, what's the alternative? You know, Especially for like a politician, like you're subject to the fickle will of the American voter. You could be doing a great job, fuck up once, and you're out. And then what? If you're a business owner and you had to turn that business over to somebody else, or you had to sell that business so you can pursue your, political ambitions, which may be solely to serve your community. You know, Somebody comes out, makes a couple tweets about you that may or may not be true. They gain some momentum in your district, and next thing you know, you're freaking out of a job. And so people are going to take that money, because the windfalls are real. Like the whole the whole freaking system is you know doesn't really support people who are out there that just want to do the good thing. those days are those days are dwindling, man.
Yeah, I
You know,
think that the
so what do you
system
do? You
actually
can't,
calls.
so what do you do? Like stuff that I was talking about. Like, I don't think we should be out there like writing checks for Americans. I think that's kind of crazy. Um, yeah, I think people should get up and go to work for it. But let's try to let's try to bring down the cost of living, or let's provide some service, some basic human services. I feel like if people are healthy, right, they're going to be more productive. It's proven. If people don't got to worry about
Yeah.
like people out there that work 40, 50 years of their life and retire and make a nice little nest egg only to get sick and then turn all that money over to the insurance companies. Like that's a tragedy. Like
Yeah.
no one should be facing that. And then so with stories out there like that, and those stories are real, with those things happening, that's in the back of people's minds. So when some politician gets, approached by a lobbyist or someone who's willing to throw some money at their campaign to kind of ensure that they're going to help ensure that they'll be reelected, because it takes money to be in politics, they're going to take that. They're going to take that because we live in a desperate society. Take the desperation away, and a lot of problems go away.
Mm. Yeah, and I think that desperateness is something that is preached to us. The same way that if you have a dog and you put him on a leash, and for 10 years he just runs to the edge of the lawn, when you take that leash off of him, he'll just run to the end of the lawn. I think that we become habit. It becomes a habit. It becomes this. I think a lot of what we have right now is a form of false scarcity. We have so much. We have so much. We can help out so many people, but yet so many people fall into the cracks and so few win. Like there just seems, like you said, when it comes to the widening divide of people, like the wealth gap is continuing and continuing. And I read a really good book by Thomas Piketty, and it's called Capital, and he talks about capital from as far back as like the early Middle Ages. And what he says is that capital, be it human capital or be it monetary capital, any form of capital, it has two states. And throughout history, and the book is like a tome, man. It's like 1,500 pages. It's really well done. For people who are listening, the book's called Capital by Thomas Piketty. And in that book, what he says is the natural state of capital is in two classes. There's all of it up here and none of it down here. This idea of having a middle class is such a blip in the world of government and humankind. Like, it doesn't happen. And what we have saw over the last 300 years is this weird state where all of a sudden there was this middle class. And he goes through history and he goes, there's never a middle class. This thing that we have seen is an anomaly and it's going away. So what you're going to continue to see moving forward is the natural state of capital. And that is an incredibly wealthy class and a peasant class. And that's how society works. The idea of a middle class is an anomaly. It's going away. And, when I read it, I was like, oh man, it was really depressing, because he laid everything out so well, and he had all these graphs, and, he marked down all these barometers and parameters. And I'm like, oh, dude, this is a very depressing book. And for a while I set it down. I'm like, this guy's know what the fuck he's talking about. But the more that I read the book and the more that I forced myself to finish him, the more that I realized this guy knows exactly what he's talking about. And he has documented this thing so well. He may not be able to predict the future, but if we look at the past and we say the best way to identify what's coming in the future is to look at past trends, then this guy nailed it. And it just seems like it's playing out. Like, you can see that there's not really the will to create these programs to have the middle class stay there. And that's where the money is. The money's in the middle class, and it's going to be, it just seems like a pond that's drying up. What do you think?
I kind of think that there's been. I mean, if you look at language, there's always been words to describe, middle class. So I think it's been around. Um, I think, I think it's taken different forms, over the centuries. Um, and I was talking about earlier about the bourgeoisie. Well, that's French, and it's a basic, Marx used it as, in a Marxist way, it's an aristocrat, somebody with power, but the French describe it as being a landowner, more of a middle class type person, right? So there's always been a middle class.
But
Maybe not.
what about like in Roman times? Like that's only like 300 years. Like we're like, if you look at something like epochs, and it seems like royalty was always something. Like the Hawaiians had a royal family, the British had a royal family. And when there's a royal family, there's peasants. There's peasants and royals. I guess there's a merchant class usually. But those might be the bourgeoisie. I don't know. I kind of cut you off there, but carry on.
Yeah, like I said, I think the middle class has taken different forms, and depending on the time in history, and the nation state, I think it's there has been clearly defined middle class, but not like to the extent that FDR created. Um, and I think that's where it is. I think there's got to be a middle. I don't think there can just be wealthy people and poor people. That's not going to work out. That's what's happening now. You're seeing this rise of homelessness, across the country, over the last, I don't know, even like 20 years, right? Where people are just jumping off the hamster wheel, man. They don't want to do it anymore. And of course, a lot of them are, drug addicts, and there's, people on the streets that have mental issues, but there's a lot of people out there, van life people, camp life people that are just like, we're done. Like, I can't work 16 hours a day for a house that I never get to see and a family I never get to enjoy. All I'm doing is just working to pay for bills, and maybe every once in a while I get a day off. And so I think we need to get back to a place where, this is the basic American dream. Like, most people I talk to is like, hey man, I just want to own my own home. I'd like to put my kids through college if they choose to go. I'd like to take a vacation every once in a while. It's not a lot to ask, but those basic goals that people in this country enjoyed up until about the end of the 90s into the 2000s. Those basic goals are becoming harder and harder to obtain, and that's a problem, right? For our country,
it is.
And I think we need to get back to, like I said, I'm not in favor of a basic income, but there are things we can do to help people, especially like, I like the way that you put it, through the use of grants and funding for in the universities and private corporations where, scientific advancement has been made, or industrial advancement has been made. And then those advancements are then, privatized and turned around and sold back to the American people at whatever cost, and so, like, if you think about that, and you think about the playing field kind of being tilted to one direction, then I think it's only fair that we're doing some things to help. I think you keep energy costs low. Make housing prices fair, right? And kind of like start to weed out like giant land barons. Although I'm trying to become one. Yeah.
Rules for thee, not for just rules for the small people.
Yeah, well, but then you do those things, and then and look, like, all like I said, it's like that's all people want to do around the world, right? Is like, I just want to go to work. I like to have a job that pays me enough so I can afford to take a vacation every once in a while, family of four or whatever, right? I want to put my kids through college. I don't want to, after I've worked my whole entire life, I don't want to have to, give a health care insurance company all of my money should I, something happen to me that I didn't choose to happen. But that seems like
Yeah.
that basic dream just seems so far away right now for so many people. That it's like, what are we doing? We're not. No, people aren't living anymore. They're working.
Yeah. I go back and forth because like I see all that, and like I know I have friends whose kids are having a real difficult time, and I try to empathize with them and be like, fuck, dude, how are you supposed to afford a $700,000 house? How are you supposed to be out on your own when you're 18 and see these things? Like, but then on the flip side, I'm like, just do it the same way I did. Just fucking get some roommates and like struggle and fight and ask your parents and then have them tell you no a bunch of times and then realize they're not going to help you and then do it yourself. Find a way to do it yourself. You can. Like I think that maybe one thing people are struggling from, and there's an epidemic of, is belief in themselves. Like you can do it, man. Like I struggle with this too, but the truth is, if you're willing to look for opportunities and you're willing to fucking work harder than you know you can, if you're willing to work really hard and you're willing to sacrifice and you're willing to look for opportunities, I think the world will reward you. You can make it. You can do almost anything if you have those three things. And you know it's not fair. You know you can work hard. And you know that you're willing to sacrifice. I think if you just do those things, I think you can make it anywhere. And it's not easy. It's hard. And if it was easy, everybody would do it. And on some level, I realized that life throws you curveballs that you don't deserve. Sometimes life throws you a fastball and it hits you right in the face and your nose starts bleeding and you fall to the ground. But if you get back up, you're probably not going to get hit with another one for a while, at least a few innings. And I think if people had that attitude, they're just willing to go out there and say, I'm going to get up every time. And you can throw me down. Maybe there's things you can't get up from. But if you have that attitude, I think you can win in life. You may not have the giant house on the hill, but when it comes to Christmas, you get to put your arms around your wife and your kids and watch the fireworks, and you have food in your fridge and a roof over your head, and you realize you have everything you've ever needed. And I think that if that was the messaging, I think if more people believed that, then more people would live that, and people would be better.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. For the most part. I mean, life should be a struggle. It shouldn't be
Yeah.
easy.
Yes, I agree.
I mean, that's what your reward system is based on, right? Without a struggle, there really is no reward. So without the lows, there can't be the highs, and without the highs, there really can't be the lows. And so that's what life is. Life is a series of ups and downs. In Buddhist philosophy, it's about taking the peaks and the valleys and kind of pulling them out so the peaks aren't so high and yet the valleys aren't so low, and then somewhere in the middle you can find peace, right?
Yeah.
Because at either end of the spectrum you're at risk. And so yeah, I mean, highs are great, but to really like understand and put them into perspective, what those highs are, and lows suck. We know this, and I've talked about this, right? You're living in the world of hell or hunger or animality. Those are
Yeah.
desperate places to be in, and so you kind of want to be, if you possibly can, in the middle, right? And working towards sustaining some of the higher worlds in life. But there, you always need that contrast. That's just the way it is. But we get some real problems, and it's going to take smart people to fix them.
See, and this kind of brings us back full circle to the idea of, rugged individualism. And I think that's kind of how it got started, is like, you can give charity and you can help people, but ultimately people have to help themselves. Like, no, like, we all know people that have done a lot of drugs and shit. I'm probably one of them. But the people that hit rock bottom, they never go get help until they decide they need the help. Or the people that are taken away to places to get help, they usually relapse more than the person that goes there by themselves. Like, you have to understand, not only do you have to understand that you need help, but you have to be willing to ask for it. And that's fucking hard to do. It sounds easy. It sounds really easy. Just go ask for help. Like, but pride's a motherfucker, man. And people don't want to ask for help. But that's part of being, and sometimes I think that that's why we're here on this earth, is that when you look at it, if you want to be dark about it, or you want to go down these, sometimes I do this, like, it's basically you move from one tragedy, you're either in a tragedy, you're going into a tragedy, or you're coming out of a tragedy. And the fucking happiness is the time in between those things when you're not in it. What are you going to do at that time? In the middle of that time, are you going to sit back and worry about, woe's me? Or you're going to sit back and be like, this shit always happens to me, or it's not fair, or I can't do it because of this? Or are you going to be like, fuck, man, I better figure some shit out, dude. I hate this life I'm in. I don't want to continue to do this. Like, I think that that's kind of what, if you look at life like a giant school, and you're constantly getting beat up, or you're constantly moving from tragedy to tragedy, what are you learning from the tragedies you were just in? Like, if you're not learning from the tragedy that you just went through, then you have to repeat it. It's like going to fifth grade. Like, you got to go through fifth grade until you pass it. You got to keep going through the same tragedies in your life until you fix them. And congratulations, as soon as you fix that one, in 3 months, there's going to be another one. It's not going to be the same one. Now you get to move on to a different one. That's the levels.
I don't think they're all
people go
tragedies. Yeah, I mean, I don't think they're all tragedies. I mean, I think there's different levels, right?
No, you're right. Yeah, you're right.
Of different, well, it goes to my point what you were saying, about
tests.
From moving from one, you're moving from one world into the other world, right? That are extremes. And in the middle, there's what you called happiness. And I described it as peace, right? And so that's in the middle.
Yeah.
And so to try to sustain that is, to me, is like part of the goal in life, is to find peace, and to, and whether that's, cutting out things in your life. I've talked to people like newly practiced Buddhists, and I'm like, if you sit in a field by yourself for a week, you're going to find peace. If you detach from the world, you will find peace. And people do that all the time, right? Some people call it meditation.
Yeah.
But it's our interactions with other people is what brings life's challenges, right? So instead of tragedies, I would use challenges.
I like that.
And so when you're moving in and out of challenges in life, hopefully you are learning, right? Because that's another Buddhist world that you want to be in, is the world of learning. And that's a good place to be. And, it's in those worlds where, we can build the tools, right? Help hone the tools to, to be able to sustain higher levels of life being. But they all begin with like making mistakes. They all begin with, I've made a lot of mistakes. And it took a long time for me to really to actually take those mistakes and turn them into wisdom, which is what you should be doing if you're making mistakes in life, right? Like, if you're going to get something out of it, like, you can be in the world of hell, and you can be in the world of bodhisattva at the same time, right? You can exist in both of these worlds. You can be in a state of hunger and be in a state of tranquility. You know, it's about extracting value from painful lessons or from challenges and turning them into something good. You know, so within all of these different worlds or realms, you know, we have the ability to take life lessons, and however challenging they may be, and turn them into something positive immediately. But most people, you know, don't think in those terms, right? Because most people, like you said, there's a lot of people out there that literally are walking from tragedy to tragedy. There are people out there that are doing that. And, you know, and so, you know,
Yeah.
what happens to them is they end up in the world of animality, right? Because those life experiences, without any reflection on the value that they're actually getting from very tough life experiences, you know, will lead them into being animals. And so the world of animality is one of the darkest places you can be in, and it's one of the hardest worlds to escape. You know, because that actually takes reflection.
Yeah.
You know, and so
Yeah.
you know, when you make mistakes in life and you have these challenges, you know, I'm a guy, I've done time in a number of states for a number of reasons, anywhere from, you know, from assault to illegal weapons and drugs and trafficking, and you know, and a bunch of different things, and in some of those very low points in my life, you know, I've been, you know, I didn't always reflect on what it was I was doing. I always accepted responsibility, right? I never pointed the fingers at anybody else. If I ever stood in front of the judge, the words out of my mouth was like, yeah, fuck yeah, I did that. You know, was never like, oh, you know, like this, you know, this person made me do it, or I didn't realize what was going on, or, you know what I mean? I never did that shit. But then at that same time, I really wasn't learning either. I was accepting responsibility, but I wasn't learning, you know. It wasn't later on in life, you know. The last time that I did time in Texas, you know, was when I actually was like, you know, sitting in a jail cell and going, yeah, like I gotta, you know, like I broke down, because then I really started thinking about what I was doing to myself and my family, and how my, you know, how my actions were affecting other people. And then that's when you really start to, you know, you really start to grow. You know, that's where growth occurs, you know.
Yeah. It's necessary for there to be growth. Like you said, that's the only way growth can happen. You know what, Paul? I was curious if you know, we got our friend Scott here, and you had said something really powerful to me that was really positive about Scott. Like how, like you were like, for if you're listening, Scott, me and Paul had this conversation, and Paul was like, so your friend Scott could be a fucking really powerful person. Since Scott's here, I was wondering if you could repeat that to me while he's listening here.
Yeah, I don't need to do that.
All right.
Yeah.
I think that you know, it is the tragedies in your life that allow you to grow, and that you can't actually move forward and really become another person. Like uh, sometimes I think it's those tragedies, man, that like it's like the snake shedding its skin. You know, I was talking to Ben about this. Whenever a snake wants to shed its skin, it's forced to find a really rough patch of gravel or dirt, and it goes out there, and it's you know, the rough patches are the spot where we find ourselves when we shed our skin. So the snake finds like a rough patch, and it wiggles around, and it starts at its mouth, and then it has to like shed this entire body off of it. And while that happens, like the snake is incredibly vulnerable, and a lot of times like a bird will fly by and grab it and kill it, or you know, a coyote will come out, but it has to make itself incredibly vulnerable in order to shed the skin and move forward with its life. And I think that's a good metaphor for us. Like if we want to become the person that we know we can be, or that we're supposed to be, or that life wants us to be, we have to shed our skin all these different times. And the only way to do that is to be vulnerable, The only way to do that is to find is through a really rough patch. Man, I heard that recently, and it just blew my mind, because I'm like, God damn, man. It's in the animal kingdom. It's, it's a butterfly it's a caterpillar that becomes a butterfly. It's all these death and rebirth things that happen to us, and you get to emerge as this new form. And so it makes me sad sometimes when people don't learn, or they have to keep repeating stuff. It's like, man, yeah, that's pain is there. I get it, but it's so much more beautiful on the other side. And that's taking responsibility for, maybe that's breaking down in a prison cell, or losing a kid, or, losing an ex-wife, or, there's all these things that it can be. But if I can get one message out there and tell people, a tragedy is like shedding your skin, man. What do you think about that metaphor?
Yeah.
Those two mixed up.
No, that was a good metaphor. Because it allows you, I mean, when you hit rock bottom, man, and when you're at a place of complete desperation, or you are, you find yourself kind of throwing giving yourself, you're putting yourself out there for mercy, right?
Yeah.
You're looking for friends, you're looking for people who will listen, anybody who will, take time and give you attention, And so it can be a very powerful place. It's very liberating, right? When you think about it.
Yeah.
Tragedy can be liberating. It gives people an opportunity to hit the reset button, a little bit.
Yeah.
But hopefully you take those things and you really digest them, and you really think about them,
Yeah.
And then you use those things to, to benefit other people.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
Like, I've been through a lot of shit in my life,
right.
and for some reason, and I've told you this before, people call me up all hours of the night, day, whenever, friends of mine, they got problems, they want to talk to me. They show up there at my house,
Yeah.
Unannounced, and we chat, I'm happy that I can be that person for, for friends, and even people as strangers, man. I've had strangers, like, sitting in the airport, just open up to me and just start, talking to me about a bunch of shit that's going on in their lives. I've been on train rides where that stuff has happened. I've been in public places and had people just be like, start talking to me about stuff. And, it's like, it's community, right? And you take those things and I mean, there's a lot portion of my life where I've just been like, fuck you, get out of my face. I don't care about your problems. I don't want to hear what you have to say. I'll go cry to somebody else. But then, at some point in your life, you got to grow up. Some point in your life, you gotta think beyond the tip of your nose. At some point in your life, you gotta decide that you want to build bridges instead of burning them down. You want to help people instead of hurting them. You want to do good instead of bad, right? It's like it's like the basics of life. But it takes people a long time to get to that place. Some people never get there.
Yeah.
Right? Some people are so caught up in their own animalistic ways that, and they get into rhythms and whatever it may be, the monotony of their life becomes too overwhelming. And so they turn to drugs and they drink, and I've done that,
Yeah, me too.
And, and there's nothing wrong with that, but, you got to deal with some perspective, right? You should be trying to gain something out of it, for yourself, life experience, or, a way to use those things and, to benefit other people. Because if you're just out there, just like, only worried about yourself, then, you might as well just jump off a fucking bridge.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I feel like the older I get, the more I realize that that's like the real wealth out there. And don't get me wrong, like, if you're in a position where you you got food in the fridge and a roof over your head, people that love you. You're pretty wealthy. But it seems to me that the older I get, the more I realize what's important is being able to help the people around you. You know, and that's where the wealth comes in, because then all of a sudden you get this feeling about being good and doing good. And ultimately that's what money does. Money just gives you a feeling. Money just gives you this feeling of like, oh, I can buy whatever I want. Or money gives you freedom, but freedom gives you this feeling. And I think that being able to help other people, to make everyone around you better, provides that same kind of feeling. And maybe I'm saying that because I'm not really wealthy, but I think it's the same thing, you know?
Yeah, well, it's like, I mean, some of the most effective people that I know, like communication wise, or, just like role model type people, there's attached to being
Yeah.
called, a role model, but are some of the people that have been through just the fucking shit in life, people that just fucked up bad.
Yep.
Right. When they're like, hey, I don't want to be that person anymore. And I want to, I'd like to take some of these life experiences that I've had, and I would like to share them with people. And,
Yep.
People that can do that and become effective communicators and who can drop all the fear. I mean, that was me, right? Like when I was out there committing crime and doing doing shit, it was based around fear, even though I was the guy that was like, fuck the world, whatever, but it was all, it wasn't until I got older that I realized, wow, you were a scared young man, everything scared you, even though you were highly confrontational, everything fucking scared you. And
like, what's the relationship there? Like, can you break that down for us? Like, what do you like? What does it mean to be scared, but like committing crime? Is like, are you committing crime because you are scared? I don't understand that relationship.
I mean, it's just a fear of like, there's rational fears, George, and then there's irrational fears, and then there's fears that you can't escape, right? No matter how hard you try, stuff that happened to you when you were a kid, highly traumatic episodes within your life at any point in time, and so you always have these things within you, but it's about being able to look at those things and put them into, in the context in your life, and to not let those things shape the way you view the world. It's like people, you listen to people, they talk about like people that are xenophobic, that are like, hey, I know people that are like, don't call, I'm not xenophobic, because xenophobia is the fear of immigrants and I fear nobody. Okay, that may be true, but when I listen to you talk and you're telling me that, that gangsters and rapists and murderers are, and this is how you describe immigrants, right, are coming into this country. Not saying that they're not, but when your focus is about like, these people being terrible people, when by and large we know that most of the people, like immigrants that are coming to this country, just want a better life, right? They're like you and me. They just want to do better for their families. They want that dream that I talked about earlier, right? But they focus on the negative stuff. That's xenophobia, right? That's an irrational fear. I mean, you have every right to be afraid of rapists and murderers and freaking, drug kingpins and gangsters, they're going to come in and disturb your community or maybe hurt a family member. That's real. But when you focus on those types of things,
Right.
now and I'm not saying you wouldn't stand in front of one of those one of those people and go toe to toe. I'm not saying that. But it's the logic that would bring you to that point, to standing in front of those people going toe to toe. That's fear based.
But maybe
and so for me,
I agree. I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. So from when
I
was like, it was like that. There was a lot of anger, and resentments in life. And so, it was about being confrontational, but all the things that I was angry about were, usually had to do with like my irrational fears or my lack of understanding of what fear really is. And so as we get older, right, we mature, hopefully, right? And so when I say people that I know that have been, you know, at the deepest, darkest places of hell and have returned, you know, I know guys that are, you know, that are, you know, I've told you about my family life, man. I got cousins that are still freaking in the deepest, darkest places of hell, and they're quite happy being there, you know, and they're out committing heinous crimes. And, you know, I mean, that's basically every male in my family. And I was on that road too. But it was about, you know, understanding, you know, and thank God for my mom, right? Like I learned a lot from my mom. And it was about the understanding of, you know, like what fear is, you know, because in her, I saw somebody who was strong, right? Because my dad is like one of the worst human beings ever to walk earth, right? And so, like, I saw this woman who, you know, who took beatings and freaking, you know, and stood up to this man, right? And got me away from this guy, you know, not all the time, but most of the time. And I saw the strength in her and what she did, you know, and I was just really like, wow, you know. But you know, I mean, not everybody is fortunate to have somebody in their life who can actually, you know, that has that type of strength. You know, a lot of people just give in to the abusers, give in to the fear.
Man, it's so interesting. Like, I'm sorry that shit happened, man. It's a horrible thing. I can't. It speaks volumes of the way in which you see the world when you get to learn about how the way someone was raised, man. And I agree. Like I know so many people that have had some very difficult challenges in their life, and it sucks in so many ways, but it ends up being that which makes them so fucking interesting to me. You know, it's like, dude, how the fuck did you overcome that? Like, why do you think that? And when you get back to it, it's usually these horrible things that happen to you. Like that's what brings me back to my premise. Like, God damn it, like the tragedies that we're forced to go through, they shape us. And a lot of times we feel as if we are in a position that we can't change anything. And it's half right. Like you can't change what happened to you. You can't change that horrible tragedy. You can't change that event, but you can change the meaning of it. And the story you just told me is the story of a young man changing the meaning of the events in his life. Like when you grow up and you saw these horrible things and you think about the courage of your mother to stand there in this abusive world, and all of a sudden you take the idea of courage as like, I will stand up. I will fucking fight anybody, man. I'll do this. You find yourself in prison or in court, you know, and then all of a sudden you understand that, like, wait a minute, that's not the meaning of courage. I had it wrong. This is the meaning of courage, you know. And you, like, that's a goddamn, one of the greatest success stories I've ever seen in my life is someone going through a tragedy, taking the meaning that was kind of pushed on them, and then understanding and creating a new meaning out of it. Like that's the hero's journey. You know, it's the ability to create the meaning of an event that was thrust upon you in a way. Like it's hard to see tragedy as a gift because it takes years of experience of it's like a sword that you put into the you know the fire, and then you got to take it out and fucking pound that thing, pop 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 pop, and you put it back in the fire, you pull it back out and you pound it some more. You know, it seems that the more tempered that sword is, the stronger the steel. You know, but how many swords get broken in that process? And we see that happen all the time. And it's not a really great analogy because tons of parents and tons of times the world breaks people. But when it doesn't, it seems that a lot of those people can come out and do you think that what happened to you has given you the ability to see it happening to other people?
I don't know, man. It took a long time before I would even like, you know, like I said, man, it took a long time before I'd even think about any of those things, right, in my life. Like I just, as a kid, I just buried those things, you know, and and it wasn't until, it was actually quite recently in my life. Like I had this, anger with my dad for fucking most of my life, but you know, you get to a point in life where it's like, you know, I've kind of processed a lot of that stuff, and some of the things that I saw and a lot of things that were said, and then really had an opportunity to look at my dad's life,
Yeah.
and to kind of see like how he was raised, which he was he was tortured as a kid. My auntie wrote a book, and she would talk to me about it. And she actually wrote a book, describing like, her life, my dad and her brothers, you know, life in Waimanalo. And, basically where she spends a lot of time talking about, you know, being pistol whipped and hung from trees and beaten and left there. And, and just straight up being tortured. My father was tortured when, his whole childhood. And so he didn't know any better. He didn't know any different. That was just the way. But it took me a long time to actually realize, like, fuck, this is generational shit, And those scars that my grandfather left on my family, they live within me, They they live within my kids. I see the fallout and most of my cousins, my brother, and the lives that they've led, for the most part have been tragic. And and it's hard for me, to like, because I communicate with my dad every once in a while, and it's hard for me to really like, hate him with the magnitude that I once hated him, you know. Um, and I guess that's me growing up, and having kids of my own, and and what it's taught me is just just try to be a much better father than my dad was. Yeah, it's life is interesting, man. And I know people that have similar life experience, and you would never know it. Right? You talk to these people, and you would never know that they come from a violent world, or they come from a world of drugs, or they come from, because like when you go to school when you're a kid and you're growing up, and everybody kind of gets, everybody's like right there, like freshly combed hair and brushed teeth and all that stuff when you see them in the morning, and it's kind of like, but you don't know what it took for for all those individuals to actually show up to school, you know and for some of them it was a miracle that they actually got there, but you never knew that, and people don't talk about that stuff, right? So we try to do what we can, to to be compassionate, to have empathy, um and to and to care about each other. And that's what I've learned from seeing the stuff that I've seen in my life. And I've had other I lost a child,
Yeah.
and as that's tremendously, that's traumatic. That's a rock bottom experience. And so all of these things, you just try to you try to pick yourself up off the mat and learn from your experience, and then and then and so what I found was is like people who've experienced a tremendous amount of adversity in life, can actually be really effective people later on in life, if they choose to be. They choose to have some communication skills, if they choose to kind of move out of the world of fear, if they choose to, reach out to their brothers and sisters in the community and to help people, like they can be some of the most powerful people. In fact, some of the most powerful people I know, came from those similar types of backgrounds.
Yeah, it's a common theme, and it's usually the same way that abuse is a pattern, so too is helping people a pattern. When you look at when I look at the people that have helped me, they've been through something similar. Or, when I've talked to some friends who ended up being counselors at like a halfway house or counselors at like a drug rehab, and they cite, someone in their family that went through drugs. So they cite their own story about how someone helped them when they do it. And, it's like this, when we talk about brothers and sisters and family, you have your family that you're given, that you're born into. But sometimes you have a family of people that you're drawn to, like someone that does the same thing. I talk to a lot of younger men at my work that, like different races, talk to some young women. I mentor a lot of people because I see myself in them. And I think some of them see themselves in me. And I see them doing things, and I'm like, wait, what are you doing? That's the worst thing you can do. Why? Because these are the 4 things that are going to happen to you when you do that. And after those 4 things happen, you're only going to have 2 choices left. You're going to, you pick this one. And like, it's that's the family that you have a family that you're born into, and maybe a family that you can have around you if you're willing to look at the people and see yourself in them. I think that's, in a strange way, it's beautiful. Like I said, I don't think the pain or the suffering or the tragedy or the torture is beautiful. But I think the fact that someone can go through that and come out a better person is beautiful. I'm not saying people should go through it. I'm just saying the fact that they do go through it and come out the other side it speaks volumes of the human condition.
Yeah.
What we're capable of.
I mean, for the stuff that I've been through in my life, like I still, consider myself to be a lucky person. I'm still tremendously grateful. And I guess that's...
How do you maintain that? Like, do you think...
What's that?
Did you feel grateful when did you have that gratefulness, like when you found yourself in jail? Like, were you grateful then? Or is this something that kind of manifested after going through some tough times? Were you always grateful? Did you always think you were lucky? Or is this something that happened in the last 20 years or 10 years or what?
Yeah, it's been in the last, well, I mean, I don't know. The last time I was in jail wasn't that long ago, but, but, it's, yeah, I mean, for me, it was like kind of just looking around, right. At at my life and just being thankful, right, for the people that I do have in my life, however few there are, right. And just trying to see the world as being, like the glass is being half full and not half empty. And that's, like I said, that's kind of comes out of like, because when I was a fear-based person, and I used to be one, right, then I would never look at the world that way, super pessimistic, all these freaking evil forces moving about the world that are out to get me, politicians or whatever they may be, the police, all this different stuff. And it was all just, being a person who lived in fear. And then when I started moving out of the world of fear, right, then, it allowed me to kind of, take a step back and look at my life and, look at, just kind of analyze the, some of the things that I thought were true in my life and realize that they're not true. And, Yeah, and just kind of be. It's like, like talking with you. It's like, you and I debate.
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah, we do, but as like, I'm only willing to debate certain things. I don't there's things that you like to talk about that I don't want to discuss because it's not my style. I'm not, like especially like conspiracy theory shit. And so for me, like, I used to be one of those guys, and so not so much anymore. And not to say that some of those things don't have some truths to them, but you know, it's about it's about leveling out the valleys and the peaks and trying to find a middle ground and finding peace. But still also have convictions, right? It's a balance.
Yeah. Yeah, I heard a good quote recently that said this guy said, I have a good philosophy for attaining my goals. And it's pretty simple. All I need to do is see where I'm at now and see where I need to go and then visualize the road to get there. But the tricky part is visualizing the road. Like, think about all the things you have to do to get there. And then, is it worth it? I thought that was a pretty good visualization, because like if you look at your goal, if your goal is, pick whatever your goal is, are you willing to do the things it takes to get there? Like, what if your goal is to have $1 billion? And you go, okay, well, how would you do it? Well, I would have to sacrifice my family, my house. I have to do all these things in order to get to that goal. And you go, man, it's not really worth it. Why would I do that? I think it's kind of a good rocking chair test. Like, the rocking chair test is, if you hold an idea in your mind and imagine yourself in your rocking chair at the age of 80, and you wish you would have done it, then you should probably do it now. So that's a rocking chair test.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's.
I think you. I don't know. It's kind of funny. I just checked the chat on this thing.
Yeah.
And so I guess that's what you mean by your buddy was freaking back. I don't know if you guys were having a conversation or whatever. But if you want me to jump off, man, you want to bring him on and you guys can do some podcasting, I can do that.
No, I just wanted. I mean, I was reading his chats. I love you, Scott, and I think you should read that chat. He talked about how much he liked you right there, and I was like, oh, that's a pretty nice olive branch. Maybe I'll get Paul to do it. See if he wants to say something, but I don't really care. I love you guys both. But yeah, I think there's something to be said about tragedy. You know what I mean? I think that there's something to be said about the path that every individual has to go on. And even though, like, you and I have our own stories about the tragedies that we went through, I think everybody has that story, Paul. It may not be as
Absolutely.
tragic or as magnificent, but everybody has that, right?
Absolutely, man. I know that whatever my life has been, and I'm not complaining,
Yeah.
It's been better than a lot of people and it's been worse than some, and it depends on how you look at it, and depends on, on what you think is actually tragic and what you think is not. Right.
Yeah,
So
it's true.
like, I'm not out there, like, I've never been one, and, I'm not trying to compare my life to anybody else's life. It's just my life experience. I mean, do I know that there's people out there that have suffered more than me? Oh, hell yeah. Like, I'm not blind to that at all, but what I am saying is that whatever those things are in your life that have been challenging, right? So that's why I was like, I wanted to move away from using the word tragedies and to move into the using the word challenges, right? And
Yeah.
the varying degrees of challenge, that, you can exist in both of those worlds. And that's what you were saying, how you can be like in this, in the darkest, deepest pits of hell and still be grateful.
Yeah.
Like, that is possible, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I talk about Buddhism because Buddhism teaches you that.
Yeah.
Right. You can. And I guess it depends on how present you are in your own life. Right. And I went long periods of time without, like, it was some sort of autopilot that I didn't even think that I had any control over. I didn't even know, like, what my rationale for what my decision making process was when I think about, when I was a young man, right, or a teenager. And because it seems like, I've told you, like, I described myself as a very primitive person back then, right? Just like the whole mindset, the outlook on life, and very animalistic.
Yeah.
And I look at those times as like, yeah, I had some fun, and there were a lot of challenges, and there's a lot of trouble, but you know, but I wouldn't, I like living how I'm living now. You know what I'm saying? Compared to how I was back then, because
Yeah.
it almost seems kind of like a dark period, and so I guess we have these periods in life, and we move through them, right? And hopefully we're learning as we're moving through them, and then we're able to come out of the other side, a better person, with wisdom. And I think that's the key, right? It's like wisdom is the key.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I don't know. For some reason, I like the word tragedy. I don't know why. I can understand wanting to use challenge to be a way in which people could see it differently. But I think I do. Sometimes I think that going through those challenges in your life, like you can't pick your parents, and you can't choose what happens to you. And it's just so weird to me that, like, when I look back at some of the things that I went through, I'm kind of thankful for them. Like, I don't wish them on anybody, but I'm kind of thankful that I had that experience. And I guess the question would be like, why are you thankful for that? And I think the answer to that is because I found the courage to get through it, and I'm better because of it. I don't want to repeat it. I don't wish it on anybody else, but I'm thankful that I got through it. Once you get that to that spot, I think you can start looking for, like, well, how did I get through it? Well, I had some cool people around me. Well, I dug down deep, and I found out who I really am. I did some soul searching, and maybe it just comes down to the experiences in life that are so meaningful. Maybe that's another way to look at it. Maybe that's why you later in life are thankful. You have, because of all those things you went through. Now you don't have them, and now it's leveled out, and now there's no more peaks and no more real valleys, but now you have found this road that you can travel without all the giant boulders falling on you. Maybe that's where the thankfulness comes from, but that would still mean it comes from that experience. It's crazy to think about it. On some level, like, once you get through all these tragedies and challenges, now your kid's going to go through them. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, now I got to deal with it from a different angle. It's crazy to think about.
It is. And I think you're thankful for those challenges that you went through when you were younger. You know what I mean? And however it was that you
Yeah.
made your way through challenges, I think you can say that,
Yeah.
George, because I think you're happy with yourself today. Like, I think you're secure.
That's a
I
great
think
point.
I think you're secure, with yourself, and I think you're happy with yourself today. And so all of those things made you who you are, right? And I
You
think,
made
like,
peace with
for
those
people that
things, so you can be happy.
yeah, I mean, I think for people who are not happy with themselves, and they'll look at those challenges in life, and they'll have a different outlook than you did.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's weird. Like, you think about, like, how we become who we are, because we're constantly evolving, right?
Yeah.
Like, any one of us can freaking, like, have something happen tomorrow. We go off the deep end, right?
Totally.
And then, and then we could live lives of despair, and then look back at your life and think, wow, I'm not happy with myself, and my whole entire life was one giant tragedy that I was never able to overcome. Well, I mean, you've had a lot of
Yeah.
challenges, and you overcome them and you overcame them, and so you're happy with yourself, and it's anyways, I mean, I think that's kind of how it works, you know.
Yeah, it's a great point. I never really, I mean, I guess I should have thought of that, but yeah, I guess thankfulness and gratitude are a derivative of making peace of the previous tragedies in your life. You understand, like, but that's
Yeah,
goddamn. That's
well put.
I should write that down, man. That was pretty good.
Good, but it's
Damn it, yeah,
absolutely true. You know, it's absolutely true.
yeah. It's so hard to get there. It's so hard to get there, Paul, because like, how many
It's
sleepless
super
nights
hard.
have you had, or nights just fucking days of doing drugs with people to get to there? You know what I mean? Like, just be up for days, man, trying to figure shit out.
Yeah, and
Crazy.
like not getting anywhere.
Yeah, it just getting worse.
You know, I mean,
It's funny looking back at it, but it's not funny when it happened.
yeah, I mean that's how life is. That's what I'm saying. It's like it's we live, even though you can live the most simple life, but in fact it's pretty complicated. You know,
Yes, that's well, yeah, yep.
and it's because we live with we're living in the present, we're living in the future, we're living in the past. We have karma that connects all of that together, right? And it's that karma, right, from that we inherit from our parents, right? Generational karma.
Mm.
And the karma that we have created for ourselves in our past, and the karma that we will have in the future. There's an intersection where all those things meet, and that's called you. And
Mm.
so we are constantly having to deal with all of those things, right? I understand, like I have, I see it in my kids, man, and I saw it in myself, and I talked to enough of my family that I realized, like, yeah, I'm, like, that's why I say, like, the effect that my grandfather had on my family is generational. We're going to span, like, this thing could go like 5 generations before it finally clears my family, 5 generations after him. And and all that is karma. It's nothing more. And so we need to, like, I go in front of the Gohanzan, right, and I chant.
I don't know what that is. What's a Gohanzen?
It's a
Gohanzan.
scroll. It's a
Okay.
scroll. Yeah, and really what it is a mirror, right? So
Mm.
and then
Like the
I
world.
yeah, and so I go in front of the Gohanzan, and I chant the Lotus Sutra, and and all I'm really doing is taking time, out of my day to send out a vibration into the universe in a positive manner, in hopes that one day it'll return to me or my kids or my grandkids in a positive way, and to try to alleviate or reduce the amount of generational karma that I've been gifted, from my family, and and the karma that I've produced for myself, and hopefully that you know I can I can produce enough good karma moving forward that I can find that middle ground. But for someone like me, and we're not all the same, a middle ground is going to be a lot more challenging for me than it is for people that may not be carrying so much generational karma, and have led more exemplary lives than I have to this point.
Mm.
And so
Yeah.
um, and then there's people that have done that have way heavier generational karma than I do, and that have have been villains in their lives, and they will always deal with that, and their intersection of karma is a train wreck.
Yeah. It's sad, but the positive thing is you can begin putting out the positive vibrations at any point you decide to. All you have to do is decide. It's hard, but it's easy too. And I think that I've just kind of begun to understand the world of vibrations. And for a long time, not for a long time, but for kind of a long time, the last few years, I've been using a similar method of, and I got this from Carl Jung, the idea that everyone around you is a mirror. And the things you see in other people, be it like negative things or positive things, you only see those things because you recognize them. And the only way you recognize them is because those are the things that you do. So if you see somebody you really hate or you're getting mad at them, it's because they are a reflection of something that you do. And you don't like seeing yourself. You don't like hearing yourself. So you get mad at it. You want to fight it. But the truth is, that person you should be thankful for, or that thing that's bothering that you see, you should be thankful for that, because it's reminding you that's who you are. These are the things you're putting out there. So stop putting them out there. Put out something positive, and you'll get the positive coming back. You focus on the beauty that you see in other people, and that is a reflection of the beauty inside of you. It's, if you want to break it down to an actual level, it's the vibrations you put out there. If you could see sound waves, then the positive deeds and things you do would emanate a positive cosine wave or a sine wave. You'll be able to see the difference versus the negative thing that you do. And ultimately, that wave is going to hit something and refract back to you or break up into other parts. So when people say you're putting positive things out there, you're putting negative things out there, you should be conscious of that because it's real. And the more you can see it, the more you can understand how you personally affect everything around you. By putting out positive or negative things, you're going to attract those things in your life. And the challenge is when the world around you is just banging all this negative stuff at you, soak it in and put out something positive. Like, that's an incredible thing. And we see that in people that are true leaders, people that we want to listen to, people that we want to be around are the people that have that ability to do. And everybody can do it. That's the beauty of it. Like, every one of you listening to this can do it. Every one of you watching this can do it. It just takes some time to build up the courage and the strength and the fortitude to change the negative into a positive. That's basically what you're doing. You're just flipping the magnet over, right? Everybody's seen a magnet. On one end is positive, on one end is negative. Flip that fucker over. Start being positive.
Yeah. If only it was that easy.
Words are easy. You can start there. You could start with easy and then start putting it into practice. It's a little bit more difficult, but you could start with easy.
Yeah. Yeah, you can. And that's kind of like, something that you and I have talked about in the past is like trying to use different things that we've read and different life experiences to try to, help people become better and more effective communicators. Right. And,
yeah.
And then, it's a baby step. Right. And, and then hopefully that people can, learn, because I feel, and that I feel that communication is everything. And I mean, I think that, most marriages erode because of poor communication. People that probably would be otherwise happily married, but had such poor communication skills that they wind up in divorce. Confrontations because of poor communication skills, people, not being able to, interpret other people's words correctly, or people using the wrong words and having them interpreted spot on. Right. And, and so, trying to become a better communicator. And that was something that always frustrated me when I was younger, right? Was like,
right.
I didn't know how to properly express myself. Right. And so it led to frustration, and then it led to anger. And, it wasn't until I actually started to focus on communication as like making it a priority in my life. It's just like, well, how come I have all these like confrontations with people all the time? You know, like you know, like, is there something wrong with me? Yeah, there is. You know, because you're a shitty communicator, Paul. That's why.
That's a tough thing for someone to get to at a young age. Like that's some deep thinking. Like you have to be pretty honest with yourself and be like, what's the problem? Why am I having this effect on people? And then to come to the realization, well, it's me. I'm the problem. A lot of people don't. A lot of people, even in their older in life, don't want to get there.
Yeah, I mean, it's because I don't think it's an actual want. I mean, I think most people walk around going, "Hey, I'm a good communicator,"
Yeah, it's
and
not a
maybe
want.
really they're not, right?
Yeah,
You know, hey, I'm a great communicator. Well, you're not. You're not a great communicator. And so most people, and then that's what it is, and that's why, for me, like I find some time every day to do some daimoku, and and
what's
then take
daimoku? I don't know what that is.
that's chanting. That's
Okay.
a form of chanting, and so I take that time to just kind of reflect, and and kind of to try to like do some deep dive into what makes me tick. And bro, it can be scary. Like there's some truths that you
Yeah.
can discover about yourself that are
Yep.
mortifying.
Yeah. I know those ones.
Yeah. And so getting through that, right, is a key, and then accepting those things, and then understanding like, hey,
Yeah.
like I have the power to make those changes.
Yeah, I'm a
Right. Nobody
beast.
else.
I'm a lunatic. What's wrong with me? How do I do that? Why do I think that?
Well,
How do
you
I
are
get
a
joy
lunatic.
out of that? I am a little bit. I've made peace with it though.
Like I think about your day, and I'm like, there's not enough time in a day for George Monty.
I was up at
Like you
4:30.
really are an animal, George.
Thank you.
Like
Thank you.
a freaking ass crack at dawn. Just like fucking, like, it's it's amazing, really.
I
When
kind of
I think
hate it
about,
a lot of times.
huh?
It's kind of a problem. I kind of hate it sometimes. It's like I have like a love-hate relationship with it. Like I'm up at 4:30 every day, and if I don't get out of my bed by like 5:05, I think horrible things about myself. Like horrible things about myself. Like I am fucking a loser. The fuck am I just gonna lay here and not do anything? The fuck are you doing? You're just wasting your life, George. Like I have to do that until I get out of bed. Usually I'll pop out of bed because I don't want to do that. But that's what I do until I get out of bed. Like that's crazy, right? Like
Yeah, I mean, I'm not up at that early, but I'm not too far behind you. Right? It's Hawaii. People get up
I
early.
know.
Especially over here on Maui.
Well, you know what? Another thing too, I think you and I share in common is, yeah, I don't know. I think I don't know. The part of me that loves it is like I have a lot of stuff I want to get done, and I'm responsible to a lot of different people, and the only way I can do what I want to do is if I have time for myself, and the only time I have for myself is before everyone gets up or when everyone goes to bed. That's when I can do the things that I want to do. That's when I can do the things that I like to do. Like that's talking to you. That's doing a podcast. That's trying to create a business on top of being a dad, working a full-time job, being a husband, caring about everything that you're supposed to care about as a man. If you want to do something other than that, then you have to do it on your time. And your time is when everyone else is set and they're healthy and they're happy and they're not around. So that's why I love it. That's why I do it. Is I want more. I want to be the best person I can possibly be, and that I can only work on myself. These selfish goals that I have when everyone else is fine, when everyone else is well. Then I feel like okay, everyone's crashed out. I have all the plans set up. Now I can work on these other things that I want to work on. But you know what I think too, Paul? Like you spend a lot of time alone, don't you? Like I'm a big loner in a lot of ways. Do you find that being something that you enjoy and that something you do is being alone?
I mean, I'm kind of used to it. I've kind of been that way. Um, yeah, well, I mean, because of my work, right? There's
Yeah.
just like I'm either in a piece of like heavy equipment or in a tractor or or doing something like that. I'm usually alone. And and so yeah, but I've also kind of developed like I've always struggled with anxiety, especially like social
Mm-hmm.
anxiety, like big groups of people, and I think just like the time that I've spent, for my work alone has like amplified that. And so yeah, I mean, I do really well alone. Like I thrive alone.
Yeah.
Um, it'd be nothing for me to fucking like, desert island, you
Yep.
know, like just freaking out there all alone. I don't, I'd be perfectly fine with that.
Yeah. Me too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but yeah, it sounds like you don't get a lot of it. I do. I escape, like
You
I'll
broke
put
up
the
on me right there.
freaking,
Mm.
it sounds like you don't get a lot of that, a lot of the, alone
Mm.
time.
It's weird because I'm alone. It's like we're all alone together all day long. Like I probably talk to, like if I do 150 stops on my route, I bet you I talk to 60, 70 people, which is a lot for a day. And the conversations range from, hey, how's it going, to, hey, how's your kid doing? Like a lot of the conversations I have, or, hey, I can't find this package. Where is it over here? A lot of the conversations I have, they're not very deep conversations, but they are a conversation, a new one with a new individual, sometimes every minute and a half or every 3 minutes. I'm talking to a new person. But that being said, because it's not a deep conversation, I'm not really thinking past that. I'm not really thinking about that person once the conversation is done. So I'm alone from like 8 in the morning to like 8 at night with superficial conversations all around me. So I have I have real estate in my mind. I have time to think about things, but meanwhile I'm having these cheap conversations all day long. It's but I don't know. I couldn't be in an office, or I couldn't. It would be confining to me in a weird way. Like, this is probably obtuse, but it would be confining to me to be surrounded by the same group of people in an office all day long. Like that, I wouldn't like that at all. So
Yeah. Right. Where you just
yeah,
can't go away.
yeah, exactly, exactly. And I'd have to be nice to everybody and like talk about things that I didn't care about. Like that would be a big problem for me.
Yeah. I mean, that's the cool thing about like your job is like you could be really abrupt in a conversation
Yeah,
because people expect that. Like, oh, this guy's got a million packages to deliver. Like, he's spending 15 seconds with me. It's about ready to end, and then it
yeah,
does. Cool, you know. But in an
yeah.
office setting, you'd probably you probably get cornered by some of these people.
Oh,
They'd try
guaranteed.
water cooler shit. They'd get you.
Back you in a corner, then you got to come out swinging. Oh, I don't want
Yeah,
to talk to George anymore.
hell yeah.
You gotta hurt their feelings a little bit.
Yeah, that's the cool thing about my job, right? It's like fucking. And I have people come up to me when I'm in a machine, and they're just like they're waving at me, and they want something from me, and I look at them, and I just fucking ignore them, and I just keep going, and I kind of let them out, right? And sometimes I stop, see what they, but sometimes I just
Right.
don't. I pretend like they're not even there. I just keep doing my thing. But
That's hilarious.
yeah, man, you know. And then they eventually they walk away, right, or they drive away, or whatever. They go away, and then I don't see them again. Maybe a couple more days, and I'm happy with that. And then
Oh, I didn't see you guys. Sorry.
yeah, I didn't see you. You looked right at me. Nah, I didn't see you.
Are you secretly laughing inside when that happens? Like, what's going on in your head
Um,
when that happens?
well, usually when I'm doing something like, when I do that, it's usually because I have some idea why they're standing there or why they're pulled up or whatever, right?
Right. Like, you
And
know
so,
what they want. You're like, I don't want to talk about that.
yeah, I think I kind of know what they want or what they're going to ask or whatever, and I just don't want to, I don't want to hear it right now. And so I just keep doing my thing. If it's
Is there ever like a
important,
little, yeah? Is there ever
if
like a
it's
little
important,
voice inside your head that's like, maybe this is something I should listen to? Maybe it's an
yeah,
emergency.
um, well, I mean, I think people have certain ways of like communicating with me that there's an emergency, you know, um, but like if they're just kind of like walking up, you can kind of tell by body language, like, oh, this is unimportant.
Yeah,
Here's
you
a
can.
waste of time, right? And then I keep going. And oftentimes it's like, there's been either like an ongoing issue or something that's been happening or whatever, and I'm
Right.
tired of like, hey, look, I've given you all the advice I can give, and I know why you're standing here, and it's time for you to just go away, right?
Yeah.
And
Yep.
and you got to figure it out. But I'm that type of boss, though. Like I don't care if people show up late, just get your work done. I don't care if you take an hour and a half lunch, just get your work done. I don't care if but I expect that your tasks for the day will be completed. I don't care if you spend an hour and a half
Yeah.
arguing with your girlfriend on the phone. You know what I mean? Just get your
You get
shit
it
done.
done.
Because I don't like to babysit. That's like the first thing I tell people, like, that come out and work with us is like, hey, I'm not going to babysit you. Right. But I'm not going to think about you either. So we have goals, we have tasks that need to be done day to day, and we'll teach you how to do those things. And if they're not getting completed, then you'll be gone. Like but I'm not gonna,
Perfect.
come crashing down on you because you were 40 minutes late to work, and I'm not gonna come crashing down on you because you took a 2-hour lunch because you had a fucking social problem with your girlfriend or your mom or whatever the fuck. You know what I mean? Like I don't care about that
Yeah.
stuff. All I care about is you getting your job done.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I'm kind
Yeah.
of a
That's the best kind of people to work with.
yeah. I think I'm a kind of a hands off boss. Like I just like here it is. I'll train you. This is what we're doing. This is where I
Yeah.
expect you to be by the end of the day. You know, and if you're not there and you've been on the phone, and I know you've been on the phone, and I'm leaving at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock or whatever, I expect you to stay and get it done. You owe me that, right?
Yeah.
And if you start falling behind, well, then I'll find somebody else to do your job. And for the most part, it's always worked out, you know?
Yeah. 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 I think people find that refreshing. Like, fucking have a little faith in me. I'll fucking get it. I can do it. I'm not a dummy. Just show me how to do it. Show me the right way to do it, and I'll fucking get it done. Some people like
Yeah,
to be told what to do, I guess.
some people do. Some people do. Um, but, like, out on our farm, um, it's such a big place that, like, we don't always see each other. And of course, like, if you have like a real problem, I'll get out of whatever I'm in and jump in my truck and come find you and we'll fix it. Right. But,
Sure.
at the same time, like, I expect people to be a little, self-reliant and, you know, and to try to solve the problem on their own before they get on the phone and call me. And I don't require a lot of communication either. I mean, I understand. People told me because I've been through it all. Like I've been on all of the equipment. I've had every
Yeah.
breakdown you can think of. I know what all the challenges are, and so I have an idea of what the people who work for me are
Yep.
doing. And yeah, and it's more goal oriented. It's not time. If you want to come and like I've never denied anybody a day off ever. Oh, I want 2 weeks, 3 weeks to go freaking backpacking with my girlfriend on the Big Island, or I'm going to Australia, or I'm going wherever I'm going to go. I'm just going to go do that. It's like, cool, do it. I've had people that have come back from,
Have fun.
being gone a month and immediately ask for a couple of days off because they just want to go hang out with some visitors that are coming to see them, and they're going to go to the beach. Cool, whatever. We'll pick up the slack. We'll make it work. And
Yeah.
and so I think it's been really well received from the people who work with us, right? It's like, we don't, like, I'm not trying to get in the way of you enjoying your life, but also understand that there's a balance, right? That we have a job to get done here, and all of our livelihoods depend on it. So
Yeah.
yeah, we try to create, a place where people actually want to come and work, and it's worked out for us. We've had some people, but some people that are just not fit for that type of work, and and so they don't last long. But the ones that are like, yeah, they enjoy the work, they enjoy farming, they enjoy beekeeping, they enjoy those things, then those ones hang around, because, like I said, we're pretty cool with, like working for us. When I say us, I have a business partner, right? So we're pretty easy to work for.
When you look
Just
for people to work on the farm, do you look for specifically like one race and gender?
no,
Okay, just a second.
no, not at all. Like, we've had, like, I mean, I've had I've had some really good workers of all different races and genders. I had a woman, like, when we started out years ago, who she was a single mom of three. She'd come from a pretty rough situation with her ex-husband. And when we met her, like, she was rolling cigars at, like, the Grand Wailea on weekends and nights to make money. And, like, her and all of her kids were living in, like, a 1-bedroom apartment. And she would come out and she would work for us, and she would work all day. And then, her kids were a little bit older, so she would sleep in her van on the farm, and then be up at, like 4 o'clock in the morning. And just, like, this woman put out so much work for so long. It was incredible, like, what she did. And she would, like, I would leave and she would still be working, and I'd always have to tell her and be like, look, like, I can't, like, we got overtime here. There's, like, state rules about this. And she's like, just give me cash. I don't give a fuck. And I'd be like, all right. Fucking, she wanted to, she was a workhorse, man. She really was. I mean, I've had some really good workers, and then I've had some bad ones too. I mean, it's just the way it goes. But it's but we always make it about people first, right? It's like people first place.
Yeah, it should be.
Yeah, I mean, that's
a rule.
Yeah, and so that's the way you kind of keep it. You keep it, you keep it positive, right? I don't want people who are out there working on the farm, like, and we've had guys fuck up, whatever, and they get fucking, there's repercussions, it depends on what you do, and just the nature of it. But, like, if you're out there and you're showing up and you're working hard, man, then it's an easy job. I mean, it's a grueling job, but dealing with us is easy. And we've bought transport for our workers, like, like, we've had good workers that are that were struggling. They're hitchhiking and taking the bus and all that stuff. We're like, fuck, we fucking, helped them, gave them some money so they can get a car, or bought them a fucking moped, right? Or like, things in their lives a little bit easier for them, like, whatever we can do. I mean, it's not much, but, help them out as much as we can. Let people live on our farm, because they were became homeless while they were working with us, or before they were working for us, had no security. We'd let them, live on our farm.
Yeah, I think it speaks volumes of people first. I wish that could be the first line in every contract that people sign.
Well, I mean, it's got to be, right. It's like this whole
Should
night,
be.
the stuff that we've been talking about, right? What we've been talking about tonight. This whole thing,
Yeah.
man, is all
Yeah.
it's like a people first thing. You know, whatever your life experiences
Yeah.
are, whatever challenges that you have met in your life, and whatever, you know, there's a real humanistic quality to all of us, and to express that and to live by that rule, is what we should all be striving to do.
Yeah. I like it. I think that's a good spot to leave it, man. I'm getting I'm thankful, man. This is a great conversation. I miss talking to you, my friend. This is our first conversation on our first podcast of 2023.
It was, yeah. Yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
great, man.
Yeah.
I enjoyed talking to you.
Yeah, and vice versa. We went pretty deep, man. We talked about a lot of family things that I never heard before, man. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just these. We all have stories, man. Some are worse, some are better, but we all have stories, and they're all equally as profound to us as individuals. And and to me, it's like this has been the theme of my life for the last 20 years: is how do you take all that and turn it into something productive?
You just did it. You just did it tonight, I think.
You try. I mean, that's all you can do is try. But right on, George.
Well, I think it's a direct. Yeah, you got it, man. I'll hit you up tomorrow, man. We'll figure out. I'll text you or call you or something in a few hours, and I'm super stoked, man. I really enjoy talking to you, and I appreciate our friendship, and I think I'm better because of it. So I'll talk to you soon. I hope you have a great night. Tell the family I said what's up, and talk to you soon, my friend.
All right, George. Yeah, give your family my aloha, and look forward to our next chat.
Absolutely, man. All right, I'm going to end this broadcast. Aloha.
Aloha.